Hey guys, I wanted to start a Mars Through the Houses series for you, so that you can understand a little bit better what that position means in your chart or someone that you care about. I'm going to actually start with the 12th house and work my way backwards because I'm just a strange person like that. So the 12th house, many of you may already be familiar, so I won't spend too much time on this, but the 12th house represents life thereafter as well as life before life. It's the void. It's also the collective. So the very thing that connects all of us between each other is the thing that is there before and after we are alive. So it's the void before the Big Bang, and it is the primordial soup that we all emerged from. It is associated with Pisces, which is represented by the two fish. And the two fish is really trying to represent the concept of a school of fish, which moves together as it navigates the ocean. And that is also what the subconscious, or I'm sorry, the collective is like. All of us are actually sharing this energy, whether we're aware of it or not. So it's a very abstract and spiritual house, not religious, but spiritual house that is quite hard to pin down and understand. Its very nature is almost illusionary. And that's why this house is represented a lot by illusion, things we have trouble identifying within ourselves, as well as isolated places, because these isolated places take us away from society as we know it, into a space outside of that. And in doing that, in separating from conscious society, we are able to connect again to this collective that we come from. So it can represent places like hospitals and prisons and all sorts of things of those nature. So Mars represents our sort of our anger is a really common way that it's simplified, but it's really our energy, how we get what we want, how we express our anger, how we what kind of energy we have, and where we direct it. So that's a long opener to say that when you put these two together, it can be really difficult and confusing because Mars is associated with, Aries and the first house and go, like, let me get my shit done. Like, this is the house that wants to really move forward. And the 12th house just isn't about that. It's not about actualizing our own individual goals as much. So this combination can create some really interesting personality traits and experiences in life. For instance, one of the things that it can bring up, as I said, this house represents areas of our life that we are unconscious of, that we have difficulty identifying within ourselves. And Mars can represent enemies. So a lot of times I've seen this represent as people who have secretive enemies or have enemies they didn't expect to be enemies. They seem to have a really hard time identifying who their real enemies are. They can suffer, on the one hand, at times, of paranoia and being concerned about who their real enemies are. And then on the other hand, people who are clearly presenting themselves as enemies, they sort of have a hard time recognizing that. And so there's this confusion around enemies that causes a lot of problems in their life. One such example of a person like this is Britney Spears. I did a video about her recently. That's part of what inspired this video. But her Mars being in the 12th house, if you look at her lifestyle, she certainly has enemies and has had enemies throughout her life that undermined her in various ways. So another thing that I've noticed come up a lot with Mars in the 12th house is the energy of Mars is very active and wants to move forward. So it being submerged in the deep oceans here can create some nervous energy because this energy isn't allowed to be so openly expressed. And it not being openly expressed properly you'll usually find that these people have something in their life that prevents them from being able to assert themselves the way they want to, at least for the first part of their lives, maybe the first 30 years, if not longer. Not being able to express that and not being able to be who they want, not being able to go and get what they want to get in life could create a lot of problems in them as far as bad dreams, body aches. It can create a lot of nervous tension, so it can create breakdowns. It can create also a lot of misplaced or seemingly misplaced fear and anxiety that sort of kind of comes out of nowhere. I know some people with displacement, and they will, you know, randomly, they're the type that if you're staying out in a cabin in the woods, they'll randomly think like, oh, what if someone came in and like killed us all right now? You know, something crazy. Those fears will just kind of pop up into their mind, and it's difficult for them to control and ignore that. So there are some reasons that this is happening. The 12th house, since it represents this void before and after death, it also can represent, it's one of the indicators in a chart of our karma in life, of our past lives. And the number one indicator is going to be the nodes, and I'll make some other videos about that. But the 12th house also is a representation of that. So planets that are in this house, as well as the sign that is on the cusp of this house and its ruling planet and what it's doing, gives us some clues as to what went on in someone's past life. So I think pretty much all of the time that I've seen that come up, it represented somebody who was likely killed violently in a past life. So they had, it could be for a myriad of reasons. You'll have to look at a lot of other aspects to understand that. But there's always this overarching theme of being violently murdered or at least killed violently. This is part of what is being held within their soul, because when the soul is killed so suddenly in that manner, a lot of the time, maybe not all of the time, but a lot of the time, the soul is shocked by that action and holds on to that shock even into the next life. And so in this lifetime, part of what they will have to do is try to find ways to manage this Mars energy that is within their deep mind and their soul. And that can be really difficult to do, but I do have some techniques that seem to really help. As I said, this energy is in danger of being absorbed. They're in danger of absorbing negative energy around them in general. And they should be very careful because they're more likely to draw in negative entities as well. They sort of attract conflict, spiritual or otherwise. So that's something they should be really aware of. So they should be consistently doing spiritual work. This is the prime person to do shadow work for sure. They're probably going to be really good at it, and I'll get to some more about that in a bit. But shadow work is going to be really important to them, cleansing themselves of that energy every day. Maybe that means you take a salt bath. Maybe that means you go for a walk out in nature or spending time in nature. It can mean a lot of different things, but whatever you need to do to make sure you do that work every single day, make sure that you do it. Because if that energy keeps holding on, it's going to continue all these other problems that I just talked about. In addition to that, another way that seems to really work the energy out of these people very well is through a lot of solo cardio exercise, or at least difficult exercise like running or swimming or something like that. Bonus points if it is spiritual in nature in any way. I know some really great yoga teachers, for example, that have this placement. Trying to overcome physical difficulties in a spiritual way is very useful for everyone, but especially people with displacement, because they have a talent for overcoming difficulties. And that's where I can kind of get to some more of the positives, because this is generally thought of as a difficult placement. But once it's managed, it can have some really positive outcomes, because this can be somebody that is able to keep fighting even in the most difficult of situations. They have a hidden well of power that they can use during those times that may really surprise people. It may not be what you would expect of them depending upon their other placements. But nevertheless, there is this sort of like secret side of them that can really fight through adversity. And it also can make them a very strong sort of spiritual warrior, someone who can create a light or be a lantern in the cloudy depths that is the 12th house and Neptune, to help guide people towards overcoming the confusion there of finding their right path, of getting through these difficulties. So I've seen a lot of really great psychologists and counselors there, people that overcame addictions and then helped other people overcome addictions, for example. There's a lot of examples of how that can manifest, but that's why I would say that I think this is one of the most underrated placements out there, because it does get a really bad rap because it is difficult to hone that fire. But once you can control it, you can be that lantern for other people and help guide them out of the dark oceany abyss. So I hope this was helpful. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more, and feel free to drop below what else you would like me to make videos on.